Awesome. All right. So welcome everyone to our Evolving Eros panel discussion on marketing for spiritual entrepreneurs, navigating the minefield of spiritual entrepreneurship in a capitalistic world without compromising your magic. A nice brief title for this panel we have here. My name's Triss and I'm going to be your host today. So as sacred sexuality facilitators and heart-centered entrepreneurs, we often find ourselves walking a delicate line. On one side, we have our deep commitment to spiritual growth, healing and transformation. On the other, we face the practical realities of running a business in a capitalistic world. So how do we honor our values while effectively reaching those who need our work? How do we communicate the profound value of our offer without resorting to pushy sales tactics? And how do we maintain our authenticity and vulnerability while building a sustainable business? These are often questions that come up for spiritual entrepreneurs. And these are questions we'll be exploring today with our awesome panel of experts who each bring a unique perspective and wealth of experience to successfully navigating these challenges. So for the next hour, we're going to be diving into what is authentic and ethical marketing, pricing with integrity, balancing visibility and vulnerability, and much more. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. It's a very juicy subject and hopefully we'll get around to answering them. But it's our aim today to spark a deeper conversation around how we can evolve our approach to business in a way that aligns with our highest values. So let's begin. I'm excited to introduce our panelists. We have Tad Hargraves, who is a coach and marketing educator. He created his business Marketing for Hippies in 2006 so that he could share his realization that marketing could feel good. He tours the world giving marketing workshops as well as online, bringing a refreshing and unorthodox ideas to conscious entrepreneurs and green businesses that help them grow their organizations and businesses without selling their souls. Welcome, Tad. It's great to have you here with us.
Thank you.
We also have Dane Tomas. Dane is a multifaceted entrepreneur, artist, and magician who has dedicated his life to bringing the worlds of spirituality and business together. After selling one of his earliest successes, The Spiral, Dane embraced the path of radical authenticity, fusing art, magic, and business in unique and powerful ways. Today, he's committed to helping awaken souls from witches and wizards to embodied leaders and spiritual facilitators, amplify their gifts, and receive the abundance they deserve. Great to have you too, Dane. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
We also have Luna, a multifaceted facilitator, co-founder with me here on Evolving Eros, a coach, educator, and serial entrepreneur who brings a unique blend of experience to our discussion today. Luna's journey intertwines spirituality, tantra, and the embodied arts. And she's passionate about making spiritual awakening accessible, grounded, and inclusive. As an artist, event creator, coach, facilitator, and serial entrepreneur, she's committed to continuous learning, shadow work, and personal growth that informs her approach to facilitation and business. Lovely to have you, Luna. Welcome.
Thanks.
So to kick off, I'd love to give each of you an opportunity to talk about your own personal journey around, bringing your own magic into the world while navigating the pitfalls of the capitalistic world. So whoever would like to jump in, please. Throw it over to Tad.
Well, I started my business in response to this. I was seeing how many of my friends had beautiful business ideas, but didn't know how to market, didn't know how to navigate this capitalist system. So that was the sort of genesis of it for me in terms of starting my business. But before that, I'd worked for a franchise of Tony Robbins and doing sales. I was 18 at the time. So I learned a lot of the sales material from, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Tom Hopkins, Tony Robbins. And for the most part, it really didn't feel good to do. It felt terrible to do, and it wasn't that effective either. And it took a long time. It took about a decade to really unpack that and why had that felt so terrible, what was off about it, and how do we market or engage in sales in a way that's really honoring of the other person. And that's become my, I don't know, mission, as it were, is to restore the beauty of the marketplace, because I don't think the marketplace is inherently a bad thing. I don't think the marketplace is inherently ugly. When we say marketplace, we tend to think stock market, Wall Street, multinational, cartel, capitalist corporations. But when I think market, I think about farmers market. I think about craft show. I think about small, local, beautiful. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think there's probably something even more beautiful that came before that, but that's still beautiful. And so that's my work, is to try to restore the beauty of that. Is what it's come to after 20 years of doing this.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing. How about you, Dane? What's your journey been to this point?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of what Tad's saying, I can sort of empathize with and feel as well. I came through as a rapper in my 20s. I wanted to be better at that, and I wanted to get famous and do all the things, that a 19 to sort of 20-year-old, whatever rapper wants to do. I was super into spirituality and personal development and all that sort of stuff in the background. And, I was reading the Robert Kiyosaki type books around money and wealth, and it was all like, if you want to be successful, you need to learn how to sell. So I went and worked in telemarketing, and I got eventually really, 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 really good at, selling insurance to old ladies and that kind of thing. And on one level, I was like, this is amazing. I've cracked the human code. I can influence people by talking to their value systems and stuff. And kind of also, like Tab was saying, at a certain point, I was like, yeah, does the world really need this? Is this actually helping, persuading Gladys that if she breaks her thigh bone, she'll get a $3,000 payout or whatever, and that she should, pay a monthly premium for that? Like, I guess it was great because I learned a lot about influence, but I also felt that style and that system of doing it wasn't super additive to the world. It wasn't a huge gift to the world, really. Like, if all those insurance companies disappeared, would it really matter? So when I got out of that world, I kind of became a coach, then I became a sort of coaching kinesiologist, and then I eventually created my own modality. And I noticed, compared to my peers, particularly in the healing world, the coaches kind of had some marketing kind of drummed into them, but the healers, particularly kinesiologists and whatnot, they were just so bad at it. And I guess because I had been in the very yang deep end of down and dirty direct sales, for me, the marketing, we switched to more, and social media just felt like this huge gift that I could sit in the cafe, eat my breakfast, make some provocative content, and then people would comment, and then I could message with them, and then they would buy my stuff. So I was like, this is fucking amazing, and it's free. Like, I can talk to people for free about what I'm doing, and then they buy it, and then their lives get better. So for a long time, this was 2012, 2013, 2014. So I'm a lot more jaded now about social media, but at the time I was like, this is just fucking so great, and my thing took off eventually. Like, I had a lot of lean years before that, but when I actually figured out a cool product that did something, and I figured out how to message and language and talk about it and be entertaining, was a big part of it for me. Like, if I could create fairly outrageous content that still hit a need, then filling a room for a talk or a workshop, or getting people talking about the things that I wanted them to talk about, it's just, I put a lot of time into learn, but it just didn't seem really that hard. And when I'd be around my kind of more spiritual friends, it was a trip for me. They couldn't do it, but I guess they didn't. I guess without even knowing it, I'd had a sort of 7, 8, 9 year apprenticeship of learning how to market and sell. And moving through the part of you that treats those things like dirty words. It's like, well, to me, that just means caring enough about how people think to language things in their language, and it just means positioning things in a way that the person on the other side can sort of understand its relevance and its value. So I guess I penetrated some of the stigma and the dogma. And, I used to listen to those Brian Tracy tapes. And on the one hand, I'd be like, oh, this is horrible. And on the other hand, I'm like, this is amazing. And it was like half like amazing and half like, oh, these, this lucky kind of like brainwashy pyramid scheme, used car salesman energy, but on this deeper level of like, I give a fuck about the people I want to help enough to try to figure out how to talk to them. And I think that's what marketing really is. And so for me, the pitfalls of it, I never really, once I got going with spiritual business, didn't encounter a lot of pitfalls apart from, okay, so now I can do mid six figures or whatever through posting on the internet with free content. Pretty amazing. And then eventually being like, oh, like, so I have to do this forever now? Like it's better than working a day job, but do I have to now like, be a slave to the algorithm? And so I guess that was the pitfall that I was struggling with a few years ago, that I think really the biggest things that have helped me, apart from the technical skills of sales and marketing, have been a lot of inner work around worth and wealth, and realizing I can create whatever the fuck I want on my own terms. Like if I don't want to be on Facebook or Instagram, I don't have to. If I don't want to do this, I don't have to. If I don't want to work every day, I don't have to. So I think really a lot of the work that people have to do, apart from learning practical and technical skills, is going deep enough into their own stuff to realize you can have it the way you want. You don't have to copy what everyone on Instagram's doing. You don't have to copy the hot six-figure rich babe, whoever is the hot person of your 2024 or whatever. Like, you can do it your own way, I guess. And for me, that's been what, I guess that's why I haven't had a bad time, is because I've gotten very good at just doing things first and foremost. How do I want to operate? And then everything else, strategy wise, we can figure out from there. So that's been my journey.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing, Dane. I love the parallels between Tad and yours, following all the different sales leaders and kind of looking at what was working and what wasn't, and the kind of bit of a shadow work journey into that kind of stuff. Yeah, cool.
Totally.
Luna.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've always kind of, I guess, had the entrepreneurial soul. Like even in high school, I started my own fashion label with selling rave clothes, and soon after got into stripping and was working for myself for 10 years as a hustler. And then through that time also started other businesses, managing like performers and dancers and running events. And then I know, but I always kind of had the crutch of going back to the adult industry to make my money. Like I was like a starving artist on one side, and then I'd like run to the strip club, make a bunch of money, and then like run back and, live in a squat and perform on the street. And so, I had this like really funny, very like dualistic life of making good money through sexuality and through an industry that at the time was thriving, which kind of got worse over the years. And then at some point I was like, after 10 years, you're like, never want to go in a club again. And, so I had to start figuring out like, okay, how do I make this kind of money, like actually doing what I love? And, running events by donation wasn't working anymore. Doing things really cheap all the time and super undervaluing my work was just burning me out again and again. And it was actually, thankful I did sign up for this, coaching training to be a sex coach with Layla Martin. And it was very expensive training. And I was like, okay, I might have to keep stripping, but like, I'll do it. And one of the first things they gave us was like money mindset and like doing some inner work around that. And it was actually super game changing. And I managed to quit stripping within a couple of months of having done some of this inner work, and started charging more for my workshops and actually valuing that work and being like, well, if someone will pay hundreds of dollars just to see my boobs, like why wouldn't they pay that for me to like give them tools that are going to make them have amazing relationships and a better sex life, rather than just like a couple of minutes of entertainment? Like yeah, so it was hard, like bridging that and starting to up my like how I valued my art and my creativity and my space holding and things like that. And so I found it like, yeah, the coaching industry thing was kind of very useful in ways, but then also got me into some of the traps of, you know, defining my success by how much money I'm making. And yeah, then the last few years have been a lot of deconditioning of some of that as well, and trying to figure out like, okay, what's success on my terms, especially as someone like living with a dynamic disability where I can't work as much as other people. I can't hustle as hard as other people. I'm like, well, what is success? In a way like untangled from capitalism, where I'm thriving in my own way and making enough money to get by and to do cool things in the world, but not comparing myself to people making 7 figures and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's been a lot of, you know, trying to like expand and then like detangle all the things like, oh, that I don't like that. And I don't like that. But, you know, this bit I can work with. And yeah, it was funny even just, you know, kind of comparing as well to you guys having the sales training. Like, I guess like me hustling, you know, was kind of that. I was constantly in sales selling lap dances all night, every night. But it was a bit different trying to translate that to the internet and stuff, because people coming into a strip club have consented to be hustled. Like they've come in there for that experience. So I felt pretty comfortable playing the game because they're there for the game, while I found it a bit trickier online and figuring out like, okay, how do I, you know, like do the seduction and do the play in a way that feels like good for everyone and isn't just manipulative marketing. So yeah, that's just a little of my background there.
Thank you, Luna. And a lot of people are going to be watching this, and they're going to they're struggling to bring their magic into the world, and they're struggling with lots of conflicting things within them around how they can do that. I'd love to hear from all of you around your experiences working with people or your own journeys around like why do people struggle so much with this subject? What are the things that hold them back?
Look, I can jump on this. You know, it feels ready to roll. I think there's a million ways you could answer this, but one of the ones that I feel I've come across a lot in when I've held coaching programs and memberships and all those kind of things, and working with people long term, is it's permission. You know, if we put it in a simple category, like people don't really believe that they're allowed to do, be, and have whatever the fuck they want. I think that's one of the core things, and that's why I would still work with mentors when I'm not needing to learn more technical skills or whatever. I want to be around people that are holding and embodying a reality that I don't yet embody, you know. And I think a lot of what I learned over time, that people were coming to me, yes, they want to learn XYZ, sales, marketing, money, whatever, but really they wanted to get in the field of someone whose reality was different. You know, someone whose reality is like, this could be super easy. I've had people cry when I tell them that it can be easy, you know, and mixing it kind of embodied practices in real life containers where we processing things with money and being like, you know, you're allowed to have this easy. And there's this thing that's just fucking cracks. And it's like, fuck, really? It's like, yeah, like, you know, half of the software we've downloaded from parents, grandparents, great-grandparents is like depression era survival strategies that if you were in 1901 probably would be really useful to think life is hard and you've got to fucking graft and struggle and this and that. But that's just not the truth in this for many, many people in this reality, you know. But we don't believe we're allowed to have what we want, I think, is one of the biggest challenges. And you know, I've gradually moved there over time, and that's why working with magic, which quote unquote, not because it's not, I don't really do magic, like I really do what I would consider magic, but a lot of it is just inner game stuff, you know. A lot of it is cracking through ancestral patterns, information that you took on as a child or from your environment, your culture, your parents that, you know, told you what you could and couldn't do. And it's like, whatever you think you can't do, there's someone out there dumber than you, less talented than you, who spent less years mastering their craft than you, who's doing the thing you wish you were doing just because they didn't know they weren't allowed to do it, you know. There's an author that is a worse writer than you. There's a healer that is less experienced. that's having success because they just didn't realize, should I not do this? Like, it's not, you know, and I think that's the biggest thing that I come across is like, you don't know that you're allowed to have it.
Yeah, let me jump on that. Amen. Amen. There's no rules. I started doing my live workshops on a pay what you can basis early on. You know, there's a deposit plus pay what you can. I'd never seen anyone do it before, and I found a way to make it work. I started doing puttering sessions, I call them. I think in the UK you call it pottering, but I just realized when my friends would call me, I'd be tidying up my home, and I resented being on coaching calls, being locked into a Zoom call. It just felt terrible. And so I just put it up to my list. I said, hey, for a third of the price, you can get coaching from me while I tidy my house. Because I tried doing the dishes secretly and then I got busted and I felt terrible. So anyway, so I just made that the deal. And nobody had shown that to me. I just came up with it. You know, there's no rules. You can just, whatever you want to do. And you know, I often encourage people to just think there may be an innovation that you could bring to the industry. Nobody's thought of it yet. You just notice, like, why nobody doing this? So try it and see. Maybe it doesn't work, maybe it works. But yeah, of course we want some structures and rules, and especially when you're new, that's very understandable. And there is a certain point where I think people do need the permission and the encouragement that they can do what they want. In fact, it's one of my favorite marketing questions is, what's the thing that your people are secretly craving permission to do? There's stuff they just want somebody to say, it's okay. You can do that. You're not a terrible person for wanting to, you know, pay the rent. But I'll add a few more things to this. I think one of the things that holds people back is they get it. You know, they see what's happening in the world. They see the excesses of this cartel capitalism, and they see the financial system and the Federal Reserve and all of this. You know, there's a certain amount of, they understand what's happening. They understand how corrupt the core of the system is, and they just don't want to participate in it. And they're trying to figure out a way to sustain themselves. And I don't know if any of us have. You know, I think we all make compromises somewhere and do what we can. I mean, here we are on the internet, which is costing the planet plenty on a lot of levels for us to even have this conversation. So there's no purity, but I think, you know, we're all just trying to figure it out. And I think for a lot of people, they're just starting to grapple with it. But the other thing I would say is that one of the biggest things I see holding people back is that they just don't know how to do it in a way that feels good and ethical. Either they haven't seen any examples of marketing, so they're really just a blank slate of imagining they don't know anything about marketing, which is not true because we've been marketed to our entire life, so we actually know quite a bit about it. But you know, there's this sort of blank slate, or what they've learned has been this pushy, aggressive, manipulative stuff, and then they feel torn in two because it's, well, I guess I either do that stuff, which seems to be effective, and I make money, but I can't sleep at night, or I have to do what's ethical, but then I'm broke and I don't have anywhere to sleep at night. So people feel torn in two. And until people can find a way of marketing and selling their services that braids both of those together, the ethics and the effectiveness, I just see that people are understandably in a kind of stop-start. They just feel torn, so they don't move very far. But as soon as people find a way to market that feels really good, they're unleashed in a way. So that's, oh, and you know, the one last thought is that I saw this a couple of years ago. It's become how I end my day-long workshop. And I ask people, I say, look, I'm going to say two things. The first one you're going to like. The second one you won't like so much. Okay, number one, you fucking terrible at self-promotion. Can I get an amen? And everybody, you know, everybody feels it. Nobody really feels so comfortable with the self-promotion thing. Very few. I don't know. Some people just do it shamelessly, easily. They're called sociopaths. I don't know. For most part, people, we're shy creatures as humans, you know. it's easier to promote a product than a service sometimes, or something, because the product is just, unless you make the product yourself, in which case you're invested in it. But there just seems to be it's a kryptonite, this self-promotion thing. And that's not the problem. That's just how it is, I think. The problem is people think it should be different. And then they beat themselves up, and there's all this shame and inner torment that I should be better at promoting myself. I'm just like, where are you getting that? That's an insane idea. You're terrible at it. And the second statement is, you will always be terrible at self-promotion. Like it's just, you get slightly less shitty over time. That's about it. It's just human kryptonite, and it's better to accept that we're terrible at it and that we want to avoid it. But then if there's kryptonite, that means there's a superpower that goes with it. So then the question becomes, what's the superpower? And my take on it is that the human superpower is promoting other people. We're so good at that. Universally, humans are phenomenal at promoting other people. So then what does marketing become? It becomes making it easy for the people who love us to spread the word about us. Setting up the architecture, the systems, the mechanisms that the people who love us can and will share. Because at the end of the day, word of mouth marketing, in the short term, it's hustle. But in the long term, it's word of mouth. In the short term, it's just going for quick results. But in the long term, it's reputation. So I just see it that people are fundamentally they haven't found an aligned way to market that acknowledges the truth that they feel uncomfortable promoting themselves, that is genuinely respectful of themselves and other people. And so given that reality, it's almost impossible to succeed or to market.
Thanks, Tad. Beautiful nuggets in there for everyone to take away. Luna, did you want to share about your journey and what you see people struggling with in this space?
Yeah. Yeah, just loving all of what's been shared so far. And I guess like a lot of people that are drawn to me and my work and coming to my training and stuff, are kind of similar to me, of maybe, really wanting to make things accessible and make pricing accessible and stuff. And this has been a big journey for me from, doing events that are all just by donation and living in Berlin, Burke culture and stuff. And then also getting burnt a lot of the time from having things be too cheap. And then I can't feed my face and, all this. So, just knowing that there's a lot of ways that you can make things accessible without needing to make all of your offers like insanely cheap, and finding a way that like you can, have energy exchanges or scholarships or, make there be this invitation that like, if money is really an issue and you're a starving artist or a single mom or, someone with a disability and you can't afford this, like just come have a chat and like, let's find a way. But the price is this. And this is like being what I've had to really like stick into myself over the years. It's like, okay, I'm going to put a price that's like fair in the market, fair for the time and the energy and like what I need to make for it to be worth me doing the thing. And then, but just always find this other way that the invitation can be open and that people can just like come to you, chat. A lot of the time now I just have like a code that's like, if you are in this category and you absolutely can't afford it, here's a code for 50% off. I'm just going to trust that you're only using this if you really need to. And just having like an honesty based system. And I've found that has been really supportive because I know, it's just been really hard for myself, like stepping out there, putting my prices up because, there's that fear of like, well, I couldn't have afforded this before. Like this would have been out of my reach before. So I'm a bad person if I charge something that would have been out of reach for me when I needed this work. But just to get creative of like, are there other ways that you can do this? And I'm telling this to a lot of my friends now where I'm like, your event is too cheap. Like, I'm going to give you more money because this is too cheap and I can afford to give you more money right now. And like, I see how hard you're working and like, you need to put your prices up. And, it's funny now being the person telling that to other people when everyone was saying it to me for years too.
Yeah, which is an important thing, because the assumption most people have is if it's cheaper, more people will come. And this is not always true. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not true. It's just not a one-to-one relationship. That's not an easy algebra. And it's often an excuse. We did an event in Edmonton for years called Green Drinks. It was a mixer for folks in the sustainability scene to get together. And a woman had been running it for a while and running it into the ground. She was clearly extremely uncomfortable about money, had some big money issues. She didn't promote it that hard. We would have 20 people come. And while people came, she was just sitting at a table talking with her friends. She didn't even welcome people. And we were charging, I think it was $5 at that point, which is just nothing. I mean, it's just a nothing price. And then she said, I think instead of doing it once a month and charging $5, we should do it every 2 months and make it free. That was her grand solution. So we ended up taking it over from her. We kept it at once a month, and we tripled the price, and we made it $15 at the door, $10 in advance. And the next event we had 80 people. The one after that we had 120 people. So even at very small numbers, we're talking, because this is more of a community event, not a moneymaker, kind of a nonprofit. We tripled the price, and we got way more people. So people often have the formulation wrong. When you ask them, why do you think your offer isn't working? Oh, it must be the price. I must be doing it too often. I'm probably emailing my list too often. I'm probably charging too much for my stuff. Could be, but I would bet most of my, much diminished crypto that's not true. That it's something else. That you're not getting people's attention very well. You're not filtering well, not establishing the relevance, the credibility, the value well enough. You're not lowering the risk. There's other factors. If you go through all of those and nothing's, the needle isn't moving, okay, maybe we look at the price and dropping it. But I remember a story, this was in, I think, Banff, Alberta, the mountain resort town. And there was a touristy shop selling earrings. And this one set of earrings wasn't moving at all. Nobody was buying them. So the shop owner leaves a note for the staff person to cut the price in half on these, and let's just get rid of them. And when she comes back, they're all gone. But she's counting up the money, and it's something isn't making sense. And she asks her person, says, hey, what's up with the totals? And finally, when she dug into it, she realized that the staff person had actually doubled the price of the earrings. And in doubling the price, they'd sold out. I had a friend who played sitar for, of course, weddings. This is his whole gig. Everybody just wants a sitar for the wedding. And he was so sick of wedding gigs. So he doubled his price, and he started getting even more wedding bookings. I was so upset with life. So it's you increase the price. It doesn't mean you decrease the numbers or the quality of people.
Yeah, and I've even noticed these days, like if I do see an event that's like really, really cheap, I'll be like, they must be inexperienced, or it's like not a very good event. I mean, unless they're saying like this is a community event or there's a reason why it's cheap. But like I do notice myself getting skeptical, like if I see a workshop that is very, very cheap, that I'm like, there's got to be a reason why it's that cheap, and like maybe it's not actually that good. And so like now I even have that framework, while before I wouldn't have believed that when I had like way worse money mindset and was undervaluing my work.
And I also know if I see the price that low, that they're not going to be around that long. So it's not something I want to get used to or invest in or treat it as something I can rely on. It's like, oh, they're making these events free. Okay, they're just going to be around for a year or two, maybe 3, and then they're going to burn out and move on. So if I'm going to be building relationships with colleagues in the community, they're not going to be the ones, because I'm looking at them thinking they don't understand what it takes to do this. And I want to build relationships with colleagues that I'm going to have for a decade, or 20 years, not somebody who's going to be gone in 3 years because they've completely flamed out on their business.
while we're on the subject of pricing, there is this undercharging that people can do, but there's also this rhetoric in like the coaching world and other industries where it's like, charge your worth, charge as much as you can. And you find there's this spectrum of like people charging ridiculous amounts and some getting paid for it, some not paying enough. I'm sure a lot of questions in people's minds are like, well, how do I find the balance between what I'm worth and what people can pay? How do I make that accessible?
I think I want to jump on this, from this kind of, if we want to talk from the magical perspective of it's all made up, right? Like there's a near infinite supply of money whizzing around the planet right now. And that money is what? It's a symbolic currency that is used to regulate exchange, right? Which, as we reference, can be replicated, printed more of, etc. So it's not really a real thing. And so I think, people get super stressed about the kind of ethics of the high ticket and the low ticket and the whatever. And, like Tad's saying, like it has to be sustainable. But I think everyone, like there's no real rule. Like everyone has to find their place of where they belong. And I have quite a few really high ticket peers, and I don't really do a ton of high ticket. I more prefer what I would consider like mid-tier stuff, but I love volume. Like I love getting like 500 people in an offering that I do. And it's like, so I will hit my numbers that I want, where my friend's doing something that's like a mid 5 figures thing and they'll take their 5 or 10 people. And I think a model like that I've done it before and it worked for me back in the day, but I haven't really wanted, for me, what I experience is every dollar value to number of humans to offering configuration has its own energetic demands. Like if I wanted to sell 50K, whatever, corporate energetic magical coaching or whatever, I'm entering into some sort of contract with that business, with that thing. I don't really want to hold the other end of that string right now in my life. I'm like, okay, now I've got to deliver some epic thing that is valued at that for that company for whatever. Like, and that's a belief, right? I know that's not even a real thing. That's just how I personally feel about that thing. Like I don't really like a lot of one-on-one work. I don't really like a lot of the conditions that I would need to offer what I would consider good high ticket stuff. I just really can't be bothered. Like I like traveling the world, spending days on end making beats and sitting in the bathtub and going on dates and hanging out in bars. And then I like to deliver stuff solid for a month or a week or whatever, and then forget about it. So I think it's just about people finding what's true for them. And one of the only ways to do it is fucking test it. If you're prepared to sell a $15 thing, are you also prepared to sell a $10,000 thing? Because if you're not testing your assumptions. Like when I was in hardcore old school telemarketing, they had this kind of expression of like selling from your own pockets. And I was back then killer at volume, and you had 3 tiers of this product, and I would sell the cheapest one all day long. And the guy next to me was this Turkish guy, Eric, who just was a hustler. And we were selling the same database of like old people, right? And I'd be like, bro, how are you selling those platinum, whatever they are? Like old people are poor. And he'd be like, mate, what are you talking about? They got money stuffed in their mattress. They got it in their shoes. They don't spend it. They don't whatever. And so we're selling the same exact audience. And his belief was old people were super rich. They got, their savings under the bed. And my belief was little old ladies, they don't have income. They don't have this. And we were both right. We were both right. And we both experienced the fruits of that belief system. And eventually I realized like, I sell to these people as if they're valuing the product the way I'm valuing it, rather than selling it to them based on what's the truth, and I think one of these things is as well, if you're selling, like my first coaching clients, I was an unemployed rapper. All of my friends were unemployed rappers who sell weed and, maybe sell a few CDs out of their bag. The woman I'd sat next to in my coaching training was a CEO's wife for like some drill bit making company that sells like $500,000 products. So she's like, Dane, I just started coaching my CEO friends, it's 5,000 for now and it'll go to 10,000. I'm like, bro, I'm selling like $50 coaching, it's like 2009. And sometimes they turn up and they're like, sorry, bro, I just bought you a bag of weed instead because I don't have $50 today. And it was just like, okay, no amount of belief is going to make me in that reality be able to sell like 5K coaching. Like everyone I know is broke. But in this woman's reality, it will be silly for her not to do that because it's just the pool of cash that she's in. As I've grown, like the networks that I have access to have changed quite a lot. And so for me, it's just about finding the fit of what is going to land in this person's value system as appropriate. And I think people can get really caught up on like, oh, it's outrageous, such and such sells shit for $30,000 or whatever. Some people should be selling it for that because they're amazing at what they do, and that's the reality they want to live in. Other people that are doing that are grossly overpricing themselves, and what I've observed is over time, the market kind of figures it out and corrects it. You know, when people really are taking the piss, eventually people figure it out, and you know, I don't know. I don't worry about it too much, but I just believe people should really test different price points, and also on the inner game side, people need to work with what's there, because you know, I've had things that I went from like a 2,350 to like, let's make it 3,250, and the thing sells more of it. You know, and it's like, well, in the marketplace, that's, for me, that's a very different amount, but the market is treating it like it's the same number. You know, so I try to remind myself that it is all made up to a large degree. And as long as I feel aligned with what I'm delivering, and for me, one last thing, and I'll wrap this, but I feel like I want people who use my stuff to get a 10x return on it, you know, and whether that's literally 10x in dollars in the bank, or whether it's like this in your life impact, in how deeply, you know, if you spent $500 with me, even if we're doing sexuality stuff, I want you to feel like that was worth 10 times more than what you paid for it. And if that's happening, I feel good.
Yeah, I feel like there's, definitely this thing of nervous system capacity, and like kind of like Dane was saying as well, like, you know, when I have experimented with charging a little more, I've just felt like there's so much pressure on me suddenly of like, oh fuck, now I need to deliver this like $1,000 course. It's like, oh my God, like, can I give enough value? Are they going to get enough return? Especially with things like sexuality and intimacy, where it is super subjective. And like, some people come to my workshops and they're so ripe and they crack open and they're having like the best experience. They're like, you changed my life. I worship the ground you live on. You know, like, wow, this is the best. And some people come, they're like, yeah, I've already learned that in a different workshop, and they don't, you know, it's like the same tools in the exact same place, but some people, they're like, yeah, that was nice. And some people, it's super life-changing. And I found that that's a thing when you're working in this field of like intimacy and sexuality and all that, is, you know, a lot of it is like very subjective and about like the right person, the right time, the right match. And so, I just found that like when I tried to charge more money, I felt like this pressure and expectation, and that like, oh, if someone doesn't crack open, then they're going to be pissed off and feel ripped off and maybe like, you know, want this money back. And then I also, you know, look at who I want to serve. And I love working with my friends. I love that a lot of my friends and lovers and, you know, old school friends and shit are in my workshops and classes and doing my courses because they can afford it, and they would not afford anymore. Like, because I hang out with broke artists, and I like that they can come in my things, and they tend to like year after year keep doing my different courses and trainings and coming to my retreats. And I find I have all these returners because my stuff is like, I mean, it's not as crazy cheap as it used to be, but it's not anywhere near like high end, like compared to what other people in the industry are charging. My prices are like very, very reasonable. And, you know, I've always like had this, you know, inner conflict of like, should I be upping my price? Oh, but that person's like way less experienced than me and they're charging way more. But, you know, I just like really sit with it. And I'm like, yeah, well, I don't want to be like, I don't click and connect with all these like rich CEO type people. That's not my world and who I speak to and who I love having in my spaces and want to have at my workshops again and again. I love the weirdo artist hippie type people. So I'm happy to, make my prices a bit more on the lower end and, fill my events with people that I really love hanging out with. So that was just something that I came to terms with and was like, okay, so if I'm going to get super rich, I need to figure out some other way or some other side hustle or something. Or yeah, just trust that like it's been growing organically over the years and that I do get people recommending me and all that. Well, I think if the prices were really high, then there wouldn't be as much maybe of that. Yeah. So that's just been part of my process there.
Thank you. You know, a few thoughts. One is, it's tough for me to answer the question in the language you framed it, because the question around what we're worth, charging what we're worth, to me is right at the nub of the problem. That our worth and what we charge have literally nothing to do with each other. They're completely different conversations. And this is, I think, one of the places people get stuck, is because coaches are saying charge what you're worth. They're not saying charge what makes sense, charge what the work is worth. They're saying charge what you are worth. And so then our personal self-esteem gets caught up in the pricing. So I just think it's a red herring, it's a roadblock, the second is that, I do pay what you can for my live workshops, not for anything else. I do it for all my live workshops. And it's not more spiritual or more noble to do that. And that's important for people to understand, because I think people can look at it and assume that's true or hold it in that way, and that the people who are just charging a flat fee or charging more don't really get it. They're not as hip and attuned. But it's not true. It's just an approach. It's just a strategy. That's all. And there's reasons to do it. Self-serving and altruistic, both. But that's all. It's, no more dramatic than that. But in terms of settling on the price, my colleague Mark Silver, the way he speaks about it, I just haven't found anything better. If somebody's looking at the price, I mean, first of all, what Dane said, exactly. There's no kind of rules on pricing. There's no pricing gods. I wish there were. It'd be nice. You could take an offering you made, you go to the altar, you put it down, and you say some nice words, you come back the next day, and there's the pricing. And if anyone questions you, you can just show them the price tag from the pricing gods, and they have to just stop, or they'll be smitten by them. But there isn't. Everyone's just making it up. There's just sometimes for no reason they come up with prices. So if people want to come up with a price, the first thing I suggest is you've got to get clear on the facts. And there are a lot of facts to get clear on. And I think hippies tend to resist this work. And if you don't do this first work, the second work is almost impossible. So first work of fact finding is just, how much money do you make? What's your debt? What are your expenses? What are the costs of your business? And of this offer, if you put this offer out, it's going to bring in money, but it's going to cost money to do it. How much is that? What is everyone else charging for a similar thing in your industry? There's a lot of just information to get so you can see it clearly. And that takes some time. And most people don't want to actually know the facts. You just resist looking at our bank statements or credit card bills or all this. So number one, we figure out the facts. Number two, then it's the feelings. And he talks about this idea of resonant pricing. And it's the idea of, this works so well. You imagine a pendulum. And so you start with, say, okay, I've got my one-on-one coaching. Okay, how about I charge $1 for the hour? Oh, God, that's too little. Your body just reacts. There's no way. I resent it immediately. Then you swing to something that's way too much, $10,000 for the hour. No, I just cringe. It's way too much. I feel all this pressure that Luna was talking about. I don't want to, couldn't stand behind that. Okay, how about then $25? Fuck no, it's still too little. $7,500, $50,000, $5,000. You go back and forth like this, and eventually you'll hit a number where your body just relaxes. If you really sit with it, your body won't lie to you. You'll be $147, and that's it. That's the number. Then that's what you charge. Now, if you charge that, and for some reason it doesn't work for you, sit with it again, because maybe you missed some facts. Maybe shit, I got to drive there every time I do that. Forgot about the gas. I forgot about the car repair. Okay. So you think about it again, knowing what you know now. Because if you charge an amount that's too little, you'll resent it. If you charge an amount that's too much, you will be off rhythm in the pitch. Somebody will say, "What do you charge?" And he'll say, "Oh, I charge five." Sorry, I charge pardon me, five. You know, you just won't even be able to get it out. I mean, that's exaggerating, but it might look realistically something like this. Oh yeah, I charge it's $5,000 an hour, and you see the posturing that just happened immediately, and people then feel it. They can feel something's off. So it's better to just charge an amount that feels right, that feels really easy to say, and then you may decide to increase that or decrease that over time. But as long as you feel right in your heart about it, and you've done the numbers, in fact, there's no rules. Charge what you want. And if it feels right to, I do $500 an hour. What the fuck? Everyone else charges 50 an hour. Yeah, I know. And here's the difference. I offer these additional materials and bonus stuff. And, plus you can text me and call me after. Plus I've been in this game for 20 years and they've been in this game for 2 years. And so, here's the reasons. But at the end of the day, if somebody challenges you, how are you charging that price? Like, I just sat down, I looked at the math, and then I tuned in, and that's what felt right, and that's why I charge. You don't have to defend it. As long as it feels right for you, that's the only thing that matters.
Sage words of wisdom there, Tad. Thank you. Some things that have been coming up in this conversation have been experimentation, alignment, embodiment, unpacking our stories. And what breaks my heart when I see people starting out in business who are probably tuning into this on the edge of their seats is that there's this time element. There are these factors. They don't really have a realistic understanding of what it kind of takes to get these lessons to break through, to really bring their full selves. And that really, I see a lot of people hindered by that. And I was wondering what advice you might have to people who are kind of moving through these hurdles, these processes that gives them hope, that gives them resilience, that gives them a perspective to keep persisting with what they're doing.
Yeah, I can talk to that. For me, I think a lot of these small fears and contractions and stuff can be moved through if we're really doing our kind of like soul purpose work, it's really and we really mean that, like it's not just this platitude, then surely that would imply I'm in this for the long game, like if this is my purpose work and it's going to change the planet and I'm only prepared to spend 6 months trying to figure out how to market, that's bullshit. It'd be the same as if you roll up at the yogis like ashram and be like, cool, I'm going to master this system. I want to become enlightened. I've got 15 days. Let's do this. It'd be like, are you joking? Like, this is a life's work. This is a deep commitment. And for me, I tend to think in 10, 15, 20-year chunks on this stuff, at least in terms of what am I trying to do in the world? What am I trying to create? And, when I think about, if we're talking about marketing, the way I look at it is it's like, I once had someone explain, like in the Musashi samurai kind of legends, it's like there's a short sword and there's a long sword. The short sword is like short-term influence, communicating directly today, this week, this month, paying the rent. And then the long sword, I guess, is more like the brand building, reputation building, legacy building approach, which is like, yeah, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, the world that I want to create, the vision that I want to bring into the world. And to me, where business is interesting is the mastering of both, because if you're just holding, a 30-year vision, yeah, you've got to eat this week. Like that's a fact, you got to pay the rent this month, etc. But if that's all you're in, that's really, at the kind of lower end of your consciousness in spiral dynamics, where we're in the survival layers, we're right at the bottom, day to day, hour to hour is basically our animal body, our nervous system trying to just survive, right? The spiritual vision, if you like, is like timeless, is long term. And so if someone's getting frustrated or getting discouraged, it's like it can be really helpful to zoom out and be like, okay, so what am I trying to do here? I'm trying to acquire a skill set that is going to serve me and serve the people I want to help for the long term. So I think sometimes we can come in and think something's going to blow up in a month or 3 months, and it's like, yeah, you might. It's it's the same with anything. If you take up jiu-jitsu, I'm going to be a black belt in a year. It's like, realistically, this is a hard thing to do, and smart people are trying really hard to do it all the time, and they still don't just nail it in a second. So, yeah, I think for me, really taking plenty of time to zoom out, and whether you're doing your embodiment practices and your whatever it is you do to connect to source, to connect to your highest aspect of who you are, I do that before I'm doing business. I'm not trying to like get in the hustle and grind. I'm trying to be in my infinite self before I even do any of this stuff. And then when I'm coming from there, well, I'm abundant and I'm connected to a big picture and a bigger drive that is not, I need this much money. Even though I'm super into tracking all my metrics and all that, my primary driver is like, I want to create a magical culture on planet Earth. I'm traveling the world right now, constantly networking, hanging out. I'm spending more money than I'm making doing this, and I probably will be for a little bit longer. But I'm kind of holding it like, yeah, when I'm 70, when I'm 80, there's going to be this web, there's going to be this legacy, there's going to be this culture, there's going to be this trail of art, products, whatever. When I tap out, I want to feel like, cool, I did what I wanted. And so then it means if I'm up against like, cool, I want to upgrade my Facebook ad skills. And it's like, well, I don't want to spend 20 hours on that. It's like, you serious? Like that, spend a month on figuring that thing out, and then it'll weave into this big picture and it will help us. Oh, you want to learn TikTok? Oh, I tried it for a month. It was too boring. You got to think bigger, basically, is what I'm trying to say, and got to really stay in touch with that thing that got you wanting to do this in the first place. And if we're talking like service, it's really tapping in that place of like, I want to change lives. I want to leave a positive imprint on this planet. That's big. And so I want to connect to that. And then that helps me get through what might be a grind sometimes, in terms of, particularly when we're trying to learn new skills, realizing, you're trying to learn Instagram. Well, that's a very vague and hard thing to do. You're going to have to spend some serious time and energy in experimenting if that's what you wanted to do. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah. Amen on all that. One of the questions that I'll ask people early on, we're coming up in my membership to the business model semester. So this looks at structure and architecture. And before you get into that, you have to really contend with this question of, how long do you want to be in business? Like, what kind of structure you wanted to build? Is this a business or is this a hobby? Because if it's a hobby and you just want to be in it short term, I mean, do it. I don't want pay me any money. Just go enjoy yourself. But if you want it to be a business and long term, that's a whole different thing. It's the difference between living in a tent and versus building a log cabin. Sailing around the world on a little raft versus a Spanish galleon. What is it you're wanting to build? Because the bigger you want to build it, the longer that's going to take. And that clarity about what is the vision, what is it you really want, to me is where it's got to start, of how long is it going to take. Generally, I would say if somebody's wanting to build a business, it's 3 years. There's something Mark Silver, he got it from somewhere else, but you've all probably loved his work, heartofbusiness.com, beautiful guy. But he talks about there's these 4 stages of business. Stage 1 is you're just brand new and you're a little shoot coming out of the ground and you can't bear any weight at all. You're growing very fast, but this is a time of experimentation and trying a bunch of shit, and you're trying this niche and that niche, and you don't know what your thing is yet. You're making no money. You're not sustaining yourself on this, or barely scraping by. I mean, it's just very meager in those days. Stage 2 is so that stage 1 is kind of creation. Stage 2 is this concentration. Now you're starting to figure out maybe what your niche is. You've tried on a bunch of hats. You figured out the few of the hats you like, and now you're starting to focus. Maybe you've got one part-time help, assistant, and you're both barely getting paid. But it's sustainable, but it's just barely. I mean, nobody's getting paid a lot, but it's starting to work. Stage 3 is momentum. That's where most people go to, and that's the kind of you're in a groove. You got a bit of a team, maybe. You have the systems down. You've got the architecture. You've got the log cabin. You'll be decorating it and doing renos for a while, but you've got a place to live in that keeps you warm in the cold winters. Got an extra room maybe for a guest or two. Things are good. Stage 4 is where you shift from being a entrepreneur to a business owner, and you're able to step back. You could go on vacation for 6 months and things just keep rolling, because this is the whole E-Myth, Michael Gerber stuff. And to get to stage 3, I think that's 3 years of work, and really focusing on the fundamentals. And it also depends on how hard are you willing to work. People, this notion of, I'm just gonna, I don't know, spend an hour learning about marketing every week, or an hour marketing every week. That's different than I'm spending 8 hours a day learning business or whatever. So the more you put in, the more you don't get to go to like a 10-day Vipassana and say, nailed it in 4 days. It's just the process takes what it takes. You got to put in the time. The time is a real thing. And I would say the other thing is, as you're doing it, the importance of focusing on the fundamentals. And we probably all have our own sense of what those are. But there's some of the basics, and that's really where success comes from in the long term. To me, it's ethics, niching, what I call point of view marketing, business model, and then what I call hub marketing. These are the basics. And there's a lot of shiny shit out there. The Instagram ads and Facebook ads, and you got to start an app, and there's a lot of fancy stuff you can do. But if you don't have the basics handled, same with martial arts, it's just going to get yourself killed out there. That's what I have to say about that.
I'll try to be quick since we're hitting our time up. But yeah, I mean, and just going off what Tad's saying as well, this like it taking time. I know, now running a few facilitator trainings and seeing some of the newbie facilitators coming out, and they're being like, I'm going to quit my job and I'm just going to like start facilitating now like you. And, then like, we're trying to encourage them, like, you can keep your day job for a bit longer, and, it's going to take time. And then a lot of people like crying to me 6 months later, like, oh no, I'm not making enough money and I'm not sustaining myself. I'm like, like it takes time. And, because I sometimes say about, when I made the leap into going full time into this work, but, I'd been running events for like at least 5 years already, like part time, and just experimenting and trying things and seeing what I liked. And, all my events broke even. I was like, I just seemed to, for 5 years, just break even on all my events, which, I mean, lost money on a couple of them, made, pennies on a few other ones. But it was, a lot of time that I just got to experiment and play, and then just, make my money in the club. And it just takes off a lot of pressure, because there can be a pressure when your sole income is on this business to start compromising what it is that you want to offer, and not doing the like interesting creative stuff because you're like, oh, but I gotta pay my bills, and you've got this stress on that. So and that's always going to kind of be there. Like, I still have these niggles of like, okay, well, I'd love to do just like this really experimental, weird weekend of playing with surrender in a lot of different ways, but like, people are buying tantra, so I just offer a tantra workshop because like everyone's come to the island for that, and that's going to be an easy thing to get people in and make money. And there's always going to be this little balance that you're trying to strike between what people are looking for and what they're just going to easily say yes to, and then like what you want to offer. And we have like the bread and butter offerings that we know are just going to like sell and make money and is easy, and you know how to do it and you can deliver really well. And then from there you can have space to like do your weird creative ones. But a lot of the time also for that requires people having trust in you to say yes to your weird, quirky, strange offer. And so a lot of it's about like community building and trust building, and like, having these simple entry points for people where they can suss you out and say, do I vibe with you? Do I like your style? And then, once they're like, okay, like, I went to this taster, cheap, low, just like 2-hour workshop that's easy to say yes to. And then they're more likely to be like, okay, yeah, I'll go into this weird, crazy magic with you, strange woman. Like, okay, I trust you enough. So, there's a lot of just like the community element and trust building and finding like bread and butter offerings that are going to pay your bills that you can like easily do, that sell easy, and then, you know, having your more interesting, strange, experimental things as well. So yeah, don't need to quit your day job too early, and focusing on that like community element and like getting people to trust you by seeing you in action, seeing that you know what you're talking about.
Well, we've hit time. It's a huge and juicy subject, but I feel that we've covered some amazing ground in this call. I'm grateful for everyone here for your contributions. And in signing out, if you've got some time, I'd love to hear either a final thought or offerings that you've got at the moment that you'd like to let people know about. We'll definitely share how people can get in touch with you when we share this video. But yeah, just a final thought from y'all would be lovely.
Yeah, I mean, my final thought is you can do it. You know, it might look like a daunting path, but it's a super rewarding path, and it's totally like I know a lot of people living amazing lives because they have some version of a spiritual business, and if it's true for you, if it is aligned, like if you're doing what is really meaningful for you, there is a way to find that fits you that will serve a lot of people, and you can make plenty of money. You know, it's okay to make a fuck ton of money doing what you love, helping people. Like that's a good thing. And as for things I've got coming up, I have Wealth Wizardry 101. It's a wealth education challenge I'll be running across July and August. It's 4 weeks long, and we focus on some real basic foundations around money mindset, saving money, making more money, managing money, investing money, etc., and also a bit of more kind of woo-woo ritual and magic to support that. And I also have something called Permission, which is a application only 1 month working with me in a more intimate environment, doing kind of inner alignment around purpose, business, manifestation stuff. If people are interested in those, they can message me on Instagram. And I have a sex magic ritual in Berlin with Celeste Gonzalez called The Altar, which is sex magic for humanity. So if you're interested in any of those, you can hit me up and I'll be talking about them on my Instagram over the next few weeks.
Thanks, Dane.
You know, building on what Dane said, you know, you can do it. Jim Carrey, I don't know if you all saw this, he did a commencement speech. And he talked about how his father wanted to be a stand-up comedian, but figured insurance was a more secure route. So he did that. And then he got fired. He failed. He wasn't very good at it. And it put the family in immense financial hardship. And the lesson of all things that Jim Carrey got from this was you can fail at what you don't want to do too. You know, there's no guarantee of success either way. But why not fail doing what you love rather than doing what you hate, given the choice? And absolutely underlining what Luna was saying about don't quit your day job too soon. I see a lot of people do that, and the stress it puts on them and their business and their potential clients who they're meeting with, who now they are desperate to get them to sign up. It's just no fun for anybody. So amen to all that. I've got a starter kit. If you go to marketingforhippies.com/starter kit, it's this thing here. So there's the full signature workshop, my full footage of my day-long workshop, plus so many bonuses. There's a $50 coupon. You may turn to a 50% off coupon. So if you want that, marketingforhippies.com/starter kit. And it's just, if people are curious about my views, it's the best 30,000 foot view that I've got.
I guess for me, the final thought is just around, you know, just the slow and steady wins the race, I guess, in a way of like, you know, the more that I've just like done extra work and trainings and got my confidence up, and knowing that like, you know, I have the skills to back up has just made me more confident in over time upping my prices. And, you know, that like, that we don't all need to be making huge money and comparing ourselves to other people in the industry. Like a lot of the time I'm like, yeah, I work a few, very small amount, like part-time. And I've been doing what I love for the last like 6 years without having to work another job, and traveled around the world and live comfortably and can afford, taking care of my health and stuff. And it's like, yeah, like why wouldn't that be success? Like, if it only feels different if I compare myself with the people making 7 figures and whatever. But yeah, it's just been a lot of just like building the foundations and getting that confidence and getting good feedback from people, and them recommending me to their friends. And that's really been the kind of core of what's been working for me in my business over these years. And so obviously Triss and I made Evolving Eros. Triss is teaching some business stuff in the foundations course, and I'm teaching more about like a lot of the other stuff, as well as like energetically holding, being a leader and being in a position of power, and all this kind of stuff that usually sends people wobbling and can impact all the other areas of your business if you're lacking that core integrity or understanding of power dynamics in your role as a facilitator. So if you're wanting to just level up that game, then come join us in the course, and there'll be some basic foundations of business stuff that you need to know as a facilitator as well that we're covering in there. And I'm doing some stuff on like making sales pages and pretty graphics and stuff in there too.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Gone a bit over time, but I really appreciate all of your input and your wisdom. Thank you, Tad. Thank you, Dane. Thank you, Luna. And thank you, everyone who's watching. And stay tuned for our next panel. And maybe we'll have these guys back again to go a bit deeper on some other meaty subjects if they'd like. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.